Hi, this is Dr. Aruna, Assistant Professor, Department of English, KCS Kasinada College of Arts and Science. Now we are going to discuss about Pidgin and Creole. Talking about Pidgin. Pidgin is a grammatically simplified means of communication that develops between two or more groups that do not have a language in common. Typically, a mixture of simplified languages or a simplified primary language with other languages elements included. Pidgin is a language with no native speakers. It is no one's first language but is a contact language. In some areas, the standard chosen may be a variety that originally had no native speakers in the country. For example, in Papua New Guinea, a lot of official business is conducted in Pidgin. This language is now used by over 1 million people, but it began many years earlier as a kind of contact language called a Pidgin. A Pidgin is a variety of a language that developed for some practical purpose, such as trading among groups of people who had a lot of contact but who did not know each other's languages. As such, it would have no native speakers. The origin of the term pidgin is thought to be from a Chinese version of the English word business. A pidgin is described as an English pidgin. If English is the lexifier language, that is, the main source of words in the pidgin, it doesn't mean that those words will have the same pronunciation or meaning as in the source. For example, the word grass has its origins in the English word grass, but in Pidgin, it also came to be used for hair. There are several English pidgins still used today. They are characterized by an absence of any complex grammatical morphology and a somewhat limited vocabulary. Inflectional suffixes such as yes in plural and yes in possessive case in standard English are rare in pidgins, while structures like two books and the girl's place are common. Functional morphemes often take the place of inflectional morphemes found in the source language. For example, instead of changing the form of you to your, as in the English phrase your book, English-based pidgins use a form like belong and change the word order to produce phrases like book belong you. The syntax of pidgins can be quite unlike the languages from which terms were borrowed and modified, as can be seen in the examples above. There are believed to be between 6 and 12 million people still using pidgin languages and between 10 and 17 million people using descendants from pidgins called creoles. When a pidgin develops beyond its role as a trade or contact language and becomes the first language of a social community, it is described as a creole. Pidgin is now a creole. Although still locally referred to as pidgin, the language spoken by a large number of people in Hawaii is also a creole, technically known as Hawaiian Creole English. A creole develops as the first language of the children of pidgin speakers. Thus, unlike pidgins, creoles have large numbers of native speakers and are not restricted at all in their uses. The separate vocabulary elements of a pidgin can become grammatical elements in a creole. A creole language is a stable, natural language developed from a mixture of different languages. A language that has evolved from the mixture of two or more languages and has become the first language of a group. When we talk about the characteristics of Creole, Creole has no native speakers. It has no simple relationship to the usually standardized language with which it is associated. The speakers may feel that they speak something less than the normal languages. And when we talk about the characteristics of pidgin, it is the process of creating a new variety out of two or more existing one. It's a trade language. It's practical and it's used for immediate purpose of communication, and it has no native speakers. Here in Pidgin, syntax and phonology will be similar and morphology is left out. Let me explain you the reasons for the development of Pidgins. In the 19th century, when slaves from Africa were brought over to North America to work on the plantations, they were separated from the people of their community and mixed with people of various other communities. Therefore, they were unable to communicate with each other. The strategy behind this was so they couldn't come up with a plot to escape back to their land. Therefore, in order to finally communicate with their peers on the plantations and with their bosses, they needed to form a language in which they could communicate. Pidgins also arose because of colonization. Prominent languages such as French, Spanish, Portuguese, English, and Dutch were the languages of the colonizers. They traveled and set up ports in coastal towns where shipping and trading routes were accessible. There is always a dominant language which contributes most of the vocabulary of the Pidgin. This is called the superstrate language. The superstrate language from the Papua New Guinea Creole example above is English. The other minority languages that contribute to the Pidgin are called the substrate languages. Talking about the phonology of Pidgin, the sounds of a Pidgin or Creole are likely to be fewer and less complicated than those of related languages. Talk Pidgin has only 5 basic vowels, unlike the dozen or so found in English. And in morphology level, Pidgins have very little morphophonemic variation, that is the type of variation found in the final sounds in cats and boxes. In Pidgins and Creoles, there is almost a complete lack of inflection in nouns, pronouns, and verbs. Pidgins and Creoles often draw their vocabulary from more than one language. This is all about Pidgin and Creoles. Thank you.